Good morning and welcome to the Lane this morning. My name is Jack and it is great to be together. I'm going to pray and then Gary is going to come and lead us in some worship and then we're going to hear from Nick. Dear Lord, we welcome you here with us this morning. May you meet us wherever we are. May we have a touch of you as we worship and hear from you. If you want to stand, and then Gary's going to come and worship.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're keeping well and looking forward to what's coming up for the rest of Church at Home this morning. This was supposed to be a bit of a Von Trapp family extravaganza, but like everything at the moment, it's become everyone sat on the sofa experiencing life and church together from the comfort of home. So I'd like to share a song with you this morning, a hymn that just always gets me, always means so much. And one line in particular that just keeps coming back: all the vain things that charm me most, I sacrifice them to his blood. And I just realised that with so much that we take for granted, just getting slowly stripped away the vain things, whether it's material possessions and the things that we have every day all around us, when they're gone and life becomes a bit more simple, it's really focusing on God to find that peace and that real purpose of what life's all about. So I've been meditating on that, and rather than maybe watch me, let's just close our eyes and sing our own song to God, worship together this morning. love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. Praise the Lord, oh my soul.
Well, it's great to see you today. Thanks for tuning in to The Lane. I would pray that God would bless you today, that you would hear his voice, that he would speak to you. I'm going to be thinking today about an incredible verse in Daniel chapter 3. But before we get to that, I want us to get hold of a couple of pieces of theology that we need to get into our heads today. Specifically two pieces. I don't know if you've ever been to the gym. I mean, I haven't, clearly. But if you've ever been to the gym, you'll have seen those people on those ropes where they're kind of working two ropes at the same time. We need to hold on these two ropes today. The first rope is this rope of victory. Colossians and elsewhere in the New Testament talks about how Jesus brings the victory. And we believe that. We believe that Jesus declares victory over sin, over death, over the enemy, over the devil. Jesus is victorious. Sometimes Christians seem to think that the devil is in control. He's not. He is defeated. We believe in a victorious Jesus. You need that victory in one hand. When you are praying for people who are sick, pray with victory. But in the other hand, in our left hand, we need a theology of suffering. James, who is the half-brother, if you like, of Jesus, James says, consider it pure joy, brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds. Here we are right now in a place of trials of many kinds. So we're like those gym people. With those ropes, we're working victory and we're working suffering at the same time. They do not counteract each other. They strengthen each other. And you need to have them both in your arsenal right now. I need to hold on to this victory, because without victory, we have a miserable Christian existence. We're just waiting for Jesus to come back for ourselves to die. That's not what we're called to. And if all we have, but if things go wrong and all we have is victory, we go, well, where is God? I thought it was all victory. We need to hold the two things together. They shore up our faith and they strengthen it. So let's read together Daniel chapter 3. Even if he does not is the verse to look out for, Daniel 3:18. Let's read that together. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, and set it on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. So the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "This is what you are commanded to do, O peoples, nations, and the men of every language. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, all the peoples, nations, and men of every language fell down and worshipped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. At this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You have issued a decree, O king, that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, O king. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold that you have set up." Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve will be able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." And Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards them changed. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual, and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Wasn't there 3 men we tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, O king." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces, and the houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So the classic verse there, or the verse that really sticks out to me anyway, is verse 18. Even if he does not. That might be a verse for you today, because you might be facing sickness, you might be coughing, you might be ill, you might even worse have a loved one who is ill. And I say it's even worse because we feel helpless, don't we? We feel a bit powerless for those, especially if they're in hospital, we're not allowed to visit them. We are under this real strange kind of time in our lives, and we're going, "Come on, God, we need some victory here, but I'm going to stick with you. Even if I don't see what I want to see, I'm going to stick with you." That is the prayer of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They find themselves in this place. Even if he does not save us from captivity, they're already captives. We don't know exactly how old they are in Daniel 3, probably young men. They've certainly been taken into captivity when they were teenagers. And here they are in this strange place for them. They've been promoted through the ranks of the civil service in Babylon. They're doing really well, and then suddenly they're faced with this theological issue. Nebuchadnezzar, the emperor, he wants them to worship him. He wants everybody to worship him. It's a big empire. It covers all the Middle East into North Africa, right up to India. So it's a big old area. And Nebuchadnezzar is thinking, what will unify the people So from his perspective, he's not doing anything wrong. He wants to unify the people. What will unify them? If they all pray to the same God. What God should they pray to? Me. So he's, okay, he's a bit of a nutter, but he wants to unify his people. And he's not telling them you can't worship your God as well. He's saying you need to add me to your pantheon. You need to add me to your list. Now, if you know anything about Christians, you know anything about Jews, you know we don't do that. There is one God and we will worship him. So this becomes an immediate issue for the boys, for Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. This 90-foot high, 9-foot wide statue which will blow down once there's a big strong wind. Bit odd, isn't it? I don't know how deep the foundations were. Anyway, we're not talking about that today. They suddenly are right in the focus of this issue. Will you worship this other God, or will you stick with your God? One of the questions that comes up as we read this passage is, why do Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego get into trouble in the first place? I mean, there must have been loads of Jewish people just keeping their heads down and worshipping their God and not coming out when the cymbals and the lyres and all those instruments started to play. That must have been a terrible noise. But once all that stuff started playing, there must have been loads of people keeping their head down, not worshipping him. But these guys are dobbed in, and they're dobbed in it by, verse 8 tells us, the astrologers. Here's my little theory on the issue. These lads have been trained. Chapter 1 of Daniel tells us they've been trained in the arts of the Chaldeans, which means they learned divination. They learned the theology of the nation they've been sent to. They learned about astronomy and astrology. And you can imagine 3 strong Jewish lads who knew Yahweh, who knew he was for them, who knew the promises of God. They're in some lecture with some guy who says, and if you put this star with this star, you'll find out what happens next Wednesday. And they're going, no, you won't, that's stupid. And the guy goes, it is not stupid. Yeah, we know Yahweh. He made the stars also. You can see how that would wind people up, can't you? They're basically saying your belief is nonsense, and my belief is in the one true God. Now, that's true. Sometimes we need to be careful how we say those things. Perhaps the lads haven't been that careful. And they speak out. They speak out. We see even before we read the story, we can see, reading between the lines, that they have spoken out, even if he does not. And here we are on this day. They get dobbed in. These lads are not bound down to you. They are not worshipping you. If you were landed into Babylon, and you could look at the people, you would not see any difference between these 3 Jewish boys and those around them. They dressed the same, they sounded the same, they looked the same. It's a bit like landing in the Middle East now. People's clothing sometimes tells you what religion they are. But if you take that away, perhaps don't take that away, but if you take that away, you can't tell. The skin colour's the same and all the rest of it. What's going on here is something internal. So they look like Babylonian civil servants, but they are not. They are followers of the Most High God. And suddenly they're in this place. And up to this point, they have been quite nicely compromising. And compromise, sometimes we think of that as a dirty word. But as we learned the other week in Daniel 6, it's not a dirty word, compromise. It's a very biblical thing to do. Actually, we are called, as much as it's to do with us, to get on with all people. We're called to be peacemakers. We're called to find the compromises. Paul in Romans 12 says, don't upset people with the way that you live out your Christianity. Make sure that you are thinking of others first. It's a very biblical idea. And so Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, they go along with the training they're given. They go along with the lifestyle they're given. They go along with all that stuff until this day. And for every single one of us, there will be a this day when we can't compromise, when we are asked this question, will you do this? And you say, I can't do that. Well, if you don't do that, this is going to happen. Well, even if this happens, I will follow God. Even if it does not, I will trust him. We're in unusual circumstances, aren't we? And the catalyst for us right now is this global virus. this corona, this COVID-19. We've seen our community step up, haven't we? It's been brilliant. I don't know whether you saw the people in Flodgem all out exercising together in the street. What if it goes on for weeks and for months? It's the church who are called to stick, to pray for the peace of the city, to be the hope, to keep going, to keep working. Even if this does not end, I will worship God. Even if this does not change, I will worship God. Even if you say I can't, I will worship God. We are stuck right now and we need to decide to follow him. Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego are stuck right now with a vain, all-powerful ruler. And they're up against the forces of the world. But on their side is Yahweh. And if you've got Yahweh on your side, you are going to win. Even if he does not, I will trust him. In verse 15, Nebuchadnezzar asks, which God will save you then? Our God will save them. You know, these guys have got a big picture of God. They know he is in control. They've got suffering and victory together in their arsenal. They know that our God can save them. You know, they've not had an easy life. I don't want you to think that suddenly this difficult stuff has suddenly happened to them and everything else has been plain sailing. They've not had an easy life. You know, we know that they are looked after by Ashpenaz, who is the guy who cares for the eunuchs. So we're fairly certain that, like Daniel, they've had a serious operation when they first got to Babylon. Don't imagine it. Anyway, moving on. They've not had it all their own way, and yet they have learned that even in this place of difficulty, we can trust him. We can trust him. You know, it's to these people that Jeremiah writes his famous letter in Jeremiah 29. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. It's to these guys that Jeremiah writes that. And so they've heard that in the synagogue. Babylon is the first place where the synagogues appear because they can't worship in Jerusalem because they are captive. And so they start gathering together. They use innovation. How can the people of God be the people of God in this time of captivity? All of us, every single church in this nation, every single church in this world is going, right, how do we be the people of God in this place? You know, and for all those, like on the outside, we think the church is the building. We're showing them very strongly that it's not. The church is the people. And how are the people reacting to their God in this situation? Jeremiah says, pray for the peace of the city. And they hear that and they take it seriously and they've worked hard, and yet here they still are up against it. They've worked hard, they've trusted God, they've obeyed him, and here they are still up against it. It's suffering and victory. It's Palm Sunday today, isn't it? And you know, here we have Jesus riding into Jerusalem. It's victory, but it comes before suffering. We see the things together all the time. Verse 18, even if he does not. Recognize that God is in control. You know, they don't seem to doubt God at all. It's incredible. They don't seem to doubt God at all. No matter what happens, we're going to trust him. I mean, I imagine they are praying hard, aren't they? Lord, send an earthquake now. Lord, send a killer swarm of bees now. Lord, send, you know, the Assyrians, send anybody to rescue us. But at no point do they say, okay, we'll worship Nebuchadnezzar. At every point they say, we are going to worship Yahweh. Even if he does not, we know that he is for us and not against us. Nebuchadnezzar says, heat up that furnace 7 times hotter. He hasn't got a thermometer. He's not asking for an accurate mathematical thermodynamic reading. He's saying, make sure it's as hot as it can be. 7's a perfect number. Make sure it's hot as it can be. That furnace is there to melt the gold that has built the statue. Now, that's irony, isn't it? You know, he's just saying, oh, let's use that. Brilliant, it's right in front of us. Let's heat that up. Let's get it hot. Gold melts at quite a low temperature, but still too hot for a human to live in. 7 times hotter, and in they go. And one of the things about Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, in the couple of passages we hear about them in Scripture, is they're always together. The three of them are always together. Daniel, he's a little bit more of an introvert, but these three are extroverts. They're always together. You always find them together, and they get chucked into the furnace together. And that's so important for us right now, just to remind ourselves we need to be in this together. If you need that reminder, here it is. Who are you going to call today? Who do you know that might be on their own? And you're finding all of this COVID-19 stuff very difficult, social isolating, very difficult. Give them a ring. Because what we see here is, as they are together, a fourth person joins them. This is what's sometimes called a theophany, an appearance of God in human form in the Old Testament. You might know his name. His name is Jesus. I mean, we call him Jesus in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, Jesus seems to appear a couple of times to Abraham. Abraham greets three strangers. Now, there's a Trinitarian verse for you. Abraham greets three strangers who appear to be God. And Ezekiel, he meets the same shiny man that is in this furnace right now, I think. In Judges 3, I think it's Samson's mum meets an angel, but at the same time, she keeps thinking, it's God. Who is this stranger? And that might be Jesus, it might not, but he is certainly a sign for us that even if we are in the furnace, he is with us. Even if we are in the valley of the shadow of death, he is with us. Even if we are standing out against what the world is telling us to do, he is with us. Even if he does not, I will trust him. Now, the Bible is full of such people, and every single story, what we encounter is that God is with them. In fact, they don't do anything without him. It's a great book, The Shack, that some of you might have read. And in this shack, I think the guy's called Mitch, and he meets Jesus. And Jesus takes him across the lake, and they walk on water across the lake, and it's brilliant. And then later on, Mitch tries to do it himself, and he gets his shoes wet because Jesus isn't with him. If you are in the middle of this stuff, you need to know that Jesus is with you. If you follow Jesus, that's his promise. Never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. We need to get hold of this today. Make this your verse of the week. Even if he does not, I will still worship the Lord. Even if he does not, we want you to know, O King, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Even if he does not. What's God saying to you today? And what are you going to do about it?
I hope that has spoken to you this morning. We're going to finish now with some more worship. So if you want to stand, and Ethan and Eva are going to go and lead us. Have a great week wherever you are.
1, 2, 3.
I am dancing as David danced in the thrill of a wild romance. I'm in love and I'm not ashamed. Love's a fire that won't be tamed. Oh, my soul was not born to be caged. There is liberty where you are. Oh, your freedom unchained my heart. I am lost in the wonder, Lord. When I'm with you, my spirit soars. Oh, my soul, rising up from the grave. And I will be undignified, and I will praise you, Lord my God, with all my might. And I will leave my pride behind, and I will praise you, Lord my God, with all my life. Everything in the old to now, I won't hold back, I won't hold out. I don't care what the world may say, I'm abandoned to reckless praise. Oh, fight. And I will praise you, Lord my God, with all my might. Oh, and I will leave my pride behind. And I will praise you, Lord my God,